The stars outside the observation deck sparkled like frozen fire. Commander James Rourke stood still, hands behind his back, watching Earth rotate below. He had just completed a 3-week military drill and was waiting for his next assignment. Everything felt calm. Too calm. Then the alarm sounded. It wasn't loud or chaotic, just a sharp tone, repeating every few seconds. Rourke turned toward the communications officer, who looked pale and confused. "Commander," the officer said, "we've lost contact with New Terra 9. Rourke frowned. "Lost, as in delayed transmission?" "No, sir. Nothing. No signal. No ping. Nothing for over 6 hours." New Terra 9 was a massive colony near the edge of the Andromeda Expanse. A frontier moon covered in green oceans, it was home to over 200,000 civilians and military staff. It was also where his younger sister Mira Rourke was stationed as a planetary scientist. Rourke stepped closer to the console. "Run full scans. Check for system glitches, solar flares, anything." "We've already checked, sir. Systems are clean. Every other station is active. Only New Terra 9 is dark." Rourke's face hardened. He didn't show panic, but inside, his heart pounded. Mira was out there, and something was wrong. An emergency meeting was called within the United Solar Dominion's main military command on Luna Base. Generals, admirals, and science officers gathered, most looking tense. On the screen floated the last known image from New Terra 9, a peaceful surface, with no warning of trouble. "We are treating this as a high-level event," said Admiral Vossen. "Possibilities include an internal failure, sabotage, or—" He paused. "An external attack." The room fell silent. Rourke stood up, requesting permission to lead a recon fleet to New Terra 9. "You're not on the short list for this, Commander," Vossen said. "My sister is there," Rourke replied. "I know the terrain. I trained half the officers stationed on that moon. I won't waste time guessing." There was a pause. Then the Admiral nodded. "Permission granted. You leave within the hour." Within a few hours, the small recon fleet, 10 ships in total, jumped into deep space. It took only minutes to reach the outskirts of New Terra 9, using a hyperlane corridor. But nothing could have prepared them for what they saw. The colony was gone. Where once there had been a green moon full of life, there was now a scarred husk. The atmosphere was scorched. The orbital station had been torn apart. Floating debris painted the sky like a shattered ring of bones. "No heat signatures, no life signs," reported the ship's AI. "Survivors?" Rourke asked. "None." The crew scanned the ruins. They found melted buildings, burned-out vehicles, and fragments of shattered drones. It wasn't just destroyed. It was wiped clean, as if something had erased it with fire. Then came the final confirmation. A data pod drifted into view. It was damaged but partially intact. Rourke personally pulled it aboard and ran it through decryption. One file survived, a video message. He played it in his quarters. The screen flickered. Mira appeared, dirt-smudged and breathing hard. Explosions echoed in the background. Her voice shook. "James, if you get this, we didn't know what they were. They came out of nowhere. Not rebels, not pirates, something else, fast, organized, unstoppable. Tell Mom I—" The feed cut off. Rourke stood still for a long time, his hands clenched at his sides. His eyes were locked on the frozen image of his sister's face. He walked back to the bridge, prepped the full report, and signal Earth Command. "Yes, sir. What should we tell them?" Rourke's voice was cold and steady. "Tell them New Terra 9 didn't fall to an accident. Tell them we've been attacked." He turned to face the stars, no longer peaceful, but full of questions. Who had done this, and why? He didn't know yet, but he swore one thing: whoever was responsible would pay. In the far reaches of the galaxy, beyond the edge of known space, the stars burned cold over a massive, jagged warship that drifted like a silent predator. Inside, tall beings moved through silver halls with precision and purpose. Their skin shimmered faintly under the ship's pale blue lights. First screen peered a frisier de first, is, taught me. These were the Zilari, an ancient and secretive race, unknown to humanity. Until now. High Strategist Valzar stood before a large holographic map in the war chamber. He watched a recording of New Terra 9's destruction on a floating screen. The colony's collapse had been clean, precise, and without warning. No survivors, no resistance, just silence. Valzar's voice was calm and calculated. The humans expand too quickly. Their thirst for territory has no limit. We warned them with silence. Now we have spoken in fire. Behind him, his advisors shifted nervously. But Supreme Strategist, one said, the humans will not retreat. They will respond with force. I expect them to, Valzar replied. But our people must survive. If they wish to spread across this galaxy like a virus, they will learn we are not passive stars. We are flame. Back in the Sol system, chaos had erupted at Luna Base. News of New Terra 9's destruction had gone public. The United Solar Dominion was in shock. Billions watched footage of the lifeless colony moon on every screen. Citizens cried out for answers. Families of the lost mourned. Inside a towering conference hall, the USD War Council gathered once more. Holographic projectors flickered to life, displaying the remains of the New Terra colony. Admiral Vossen spoke first. This was not a natural disaster. The wreckage patterns, the weapon burns, we are facing a hostile power. Gasps echoed through the room. A diplomat tried to speak. We've never encountered such technology. We can't even identify the energy signature. Shouldn't we attempt contact before jumping to war? There was no warning, no message, no demands. Vossen snapped. This wasn't negotiation. This was extermination. James Rourke stood quietly at the edge of the table, fists clenched at his sides. A vote was called. The room darkened. After a long moment, the results appeared in glowing red letters. War approved. Full mobilization authorized. Within days, the largest fleet in human history was assembled. 700,000 warships, pulled from every colony, shipyard and training base. Carriers, dreadnoughts, scout cruisers, missile silos, orbital tanks, AI-driven strike units, all united under one banner, all fueled by one mission, vengeance. At the center of this steel armada stood the flagship Dawnbringer, a beast of a vessel 3 kilometers long, bristling with weapons and sensors. And on its bridge, James Rourke stood in his new uniform, Fleet Commander. His voice echoed through the ship's intercom. We march not just for New Terra 9. We march for every world that fears this new enemy. We march to end this threat before it spreads. We do not start wars, but we will finish them. Cheers erupted across the fleet. Yet even as the engines lit up and the ships rose in unison, Rourke's mind was elsewhere. He could still see Mira's face in that final message. He could still hear her voice breaking with fear. I'll find them, he whispered to himself, and I'll make them remember her name. Far away, in his own dark chamber, Valzar received a report. The human warships had launched. Hundreds of thousands. A wall of fire. He did not flinch. He only spoke softly to himself. Let them come. The stars blurred into streaks of light as the human fleet surged through the hyperlane corridors. Engines hummed with raw power. Command decks buzzed with focused urgency. 70 divisions, led by over 700,000 warships, moved as one across the black ocean of space. Commander James Rourke stood at the center of the Dawnbringer's bridge, eyes fixed on the main screen. The outer edge of Zalari space was approaching fast. No one knew exactly what they'd find, only that they were ready to face it. Status report, Rourke said calmly. Fleets are holding formation. All jump drives stabilized. No enemy signals yet. His second-in-command, Lieutenant Cale Winters, responded. Rourke gave a nod, but didn't relax. Something in his gut told him the enemy was already watching. Within minutes they exited the hyperlane. Before them stretched a dead zone, empty, silent, and strangely cold. No stars glowed nearby. It felt like a trap. Begin scans, Rourke ordered. Shields up. Weapons hot. The fleet spread into defensive formations. They moved cautiously, engines running quiet. Then the scanners flared. Unidentified signatures, 12 o'clock high. Dozens no, hundreds. Confirm visual. Winters shouted. On the main screen, dark alien ships emerged from the void. Sleek and sharp, they moved without sound. Their design was unlike anything the Dominion had seen. Smooth bone-like hulls with pulsing blue energy veins. "They're here," Rourke said, his voice firm. Before he could give the command, the enemy struck first. Beams of energy sliced through the darkness, ripping into the outer human fleets. Explosions filled the void. Dozens of ships were vaporized in seconds. Panic spread across the comms. "Alpha Wing is down. Bravo Wing is scattering. Regroup. Maintain battle line," Rourke commanded. "Do not break formation." The Dawnbringer fired its main cannons, sending a shockwave of plasma into the enemy ranks. Human warships fought back with precision, launching missiles, drones, and pulse fire. The space between the two forces lit up like a storm of fireflies caught in a hurricane. But the Zalari were fast, too fast. Their ships warped between positions, bending space like it was water. Several human cruisers were destroyed before they could even lock on. On the bridge, Rourke gritted his teeth. "They're using some kind of spacefold tech. No way to predict their jumps." "Sir," Winters said quietly, "we've lost Lieutenant Vira from Delta Wing, and Captain Shaw." Rourke's jaw tightened. Shaw had served with him since their academy days. "Gone. Just like that." "We hold this line," Rourke said through gritted teeth. "No matter what it takes." The battle lasted hours. Losses on both sides mounted. Human fleets adapted, using tighter formations and predictive algorithms to anticipate enemy movements. Slowly they began to push back. The Zalari withdrew, vanishing as quickly as they had arrived. Then silence. The battlefield was littered with debris. Shattered hulls drifted in cold space. Fires still burned inside broken ships. Medical teams rushed to pull survivors from damaged cruisers. On board the Dawnbringer, the crew stood in stunned silence. "Casualty count?" Rourke asked, though he already knew it would be high. 27,000 confirmed dead. Over 50,000 injured. Multiple capital ships lost. Rourke closed his eyes. "We survived," Winters said, trying to sound hopeful. "Yes," Rourke replied, "but barely." Later in his quarters, Rourke played Mira's last message again. Her face flickered on the screen, voice trembling with fear. He stared at the screen long after the message ended. Admiral Leah Bren arrived and stood in silence beside him. "You did everything right today," she said softly. "Did I?" Rourke replied. "Or did I just get lucky? We're still breathing. That counts for something." Rourke turned to her. "They're not just advanced. They're prepared. We're walking into a war they've already studied." "So what now?" Rourke's voice was calm but filled with steel. "Now we study them. Now we learn every move they make. Because next time, we won't just survive, we win." Outside the Dawnbringer's windows, pieces of broken ships drifted in silence, like ghosts. The void had spoken, and it was far from finished. The fleet limped away from the battlefield, battered but alive. Repair ships worked non-stop, patching holes and restoring systems. Infirmaries overflowed with wounded soldiers. The cost of the first clash was heavy. And still, it was only the beginning. Inside the Dawnbringer's command center, Commander James Rourke reviewed data from the fight. Every movement, every blast, every loss, it played over and over on the screen, like a wound that wouldn't close. The enemy had vanished again. The Zalari didn't hold territory. They struck hard, then disappeared like shadows. And they never left a trace. "Revenge feels different now," Lieutenant Winters said quietly, beside him. Rourke didn't respond. He just kept watching the footage of a cruiser breaking apart, fire spilling into space, dozens of lives ending in silence. The fleet reached the nearest Solari-controlled system 3 days later. It was a mining colony, smaller than New Terra 9, but vital to the Zalari supply lines. Rourke had his orders. Strike it. Show no mercy. The attack began at dawn cycle. Human warships dropped out of hyperjump and launched a full assault. Missile barrages lit up the dark skies. Railguns pounded the ground. The Zalari defenders fought back, but they were overwhelmed by the sheer number of human ships. Within an hour, the colony was in flames. Rourke stood on the bridge, watching it unfold. Civilians ran. Facilities crumbled. The enemy's screams echoed through open comms before cutting to static. "Target neutralized," Winters reported. But there was no victory in his voice. Medical scans showed thousands of Zolari civilians among the dead. Miners, workers, children. They hadn't evacuated in time. They hadn't even been given the chance. A deep silence filled the command deck. Later, Rourke sat alone in his quarters. He watched old recordings of Earth cities, oceans, people laughing. Then, out of habit, he played his sister's message again. "James, they came out of nowhere, not pirates." Her words were full of fear, but something else was in her voice too, confusion. She hadn't expected an attack. The colony hadn't been ready for war, so why had the Zolari done it? Admiral Leah Bren entered without knocking. Her expression was hard. "You burned their colony today," she said. "I followed orders," Rourke replied. "You killed civilians." "I lost my sister," he snapped. "And 27,000 soldiers 3 days ago." "I know," Bren said gently. "But we're not supposed to become like them. We didn't start this war." "No, but how we end it will define who we are." Her words stayed with him long after she left. That night, a message came in on a secure channel. It wasn't military. It was from the Zolari. Rourke stared at the screen as a figure appeared. High Strategist Valzar, tall and calm, eyes glowing faintly. "You are efficient," Valzar said. "Brutal, predictable." Rourke leaned forward. "Why did you attack us first?" Valzar didn't blink. "Because you spread. Colony after colony. You take. You consume. And soon there is nothing left for others." "We were peaceful," Rourke argued. "You were growing. That was enough." Rourke's jaw clenched. "You killed families. Children. So did you." Valzar replied coldly. "We're not so different." The screen went dark. Rourke sat in silence, the words echoing in his mind. Not so different. Was that true? The next day, disaster struck. Fleet Alpha, one of the main wings of the human armada, fell into a trap. A false energy signature lured them into a dead zone. Zolari warships swarmed from all sides. By the time Rourke received the distress call, it was too late. Over 100,000 lives lost. The pain hit like a hammer. Officers cried. Soldiers punched walls. Rourke stood in the war room, staring at the casualty report with a hollow chest. "They knew our route," Bren whispered. "They studied us. We walked into it," Rourke said, his voice low. "We let anger blind us." That night he didn't watch his sister's message. He just stared at the stars and wondered if vengeance had already turned him into something he didn't recognize. He had set out to punish an enemy, but with every battle, the line between justice and cruelty was fading, and the cost kept rising. Darkness covered the war room inside the Dawnbringer. The fleet was quiet, recovering from the loss of Fleet Alpha. More than 100,000 soldiers were gone, lost to a trap that should have been avoided. The weight of their deaths pressed down on everyone, but none felt it heavier than Commander James Rourke. He stood at the center of the room, facing a hologram that showed the Zolari home system. 3 planets circled a red sun. One of them, Zolar Prime, was the heart of their civilization. Admiral Leah Bren entered with a small black case. "We've received new orders from High Command," she said. Rourke turned. "More fleets?" She shook her head. "Something else. Something final." She opened the case. Inside was a small device, dull gray, round and pulsing faintly. "This is a singularity core," she said quietly. "A planet killer. It creates a black hole. Controlled, but absolute." Rourke stared at it. "They want us to use this. If we deploy it on Zolar Prime," she said, "the war ends in one strike." Rourke didn't speak for a long moment. "That planet has billions of civilians. They destroyed New Terra 9, and we've destroyed their colonies." Leah's voice lowered. "This isn't about revenge anymore. It's survival." Rourke nodded slowly. "And what survives, if we become the monsters?" The Dawnbringer and its fleets moved toward the Zolari system. The final battle was near. All human forces were converging. It was the largest formation of warships ever seen. Hundreds of thousands moving together like a sea of fire. As they approached Zolar Prime, sensors lit up. The Zolari were ready. Their entire military stood between the humans and their homeworld. Fighters, cruisers, dreadnoughts. The airwaves were filled with silence. Then a signal came through. Valzar. His face appeared on the bridge screen. Calm, still, unreadable. "You brought your wrath to our gates," he said. "Do you believe this will bring peace?" Rourke answered slowly. "You started this." "No. We struck first, but you chose war." Rourke stepped forward. "You slaughtered civilians. So did you." The screen went dark again. Moments later, the battle began. It was like nothing either side had seen before. Blinding lights, massive explosions. Space shook from the power of the weapons. Ships vanished in flashes of fire. Fighters danced between beams. The Dawnbringer led the charge, taking hit after hit but refusing to fall. In the middle of the chaos, the launch tube for the Singularity weapon was opened. The countdown had begun. "Final authorization needed," said the AI. "Commander." Rourke looked around. He saw his crew, tired, bloodied, and afraid. He saw the numbers on the screen. Enemy ships destroyed, human lives lost. He saw the hologram of Zolar Prime spinning slowly. And then, in his mind, he saw Mira's face. She hadn't died for this. "Abort the launch," Rourke said. The AI hesitated. "Repeat command. Abort it, now." The weapon's core powered down. A quiet buzz replaced the alarm. The officers stared in shock. "Sir," Winters said, "we may never get this chance again." "I know," Rourke replied. "But if we use this, we become no different than what we hate." Admiral Bren stepped closer. "Then what's the plan?" "Open a line to Valzar. I want to speak." "Commander, to Commander." After a long delay, the Zolari strategist appeared again. "I'm listening," he said. "We can keep killing each other until there's nothing left," Rourke said. "Or we can stop it here, today. Now." Valzar's face was unreadable. "Why should I believe you?" "Because I had the weapon in my hands, and I didn't fire." The silence that followed was long. Then slowly, the Zolari ships began to pull back. One by one, their weapons powered down. The human fleet did the same. In the quiet that followed, the two enemies stood still in space, neither advancing, neither retreating. And in that moment, something changed. The war didn't end in blood. It ended in mercy. 1 week had passed since the final battle near Zolar Prime. The human fleet remained in orbit, silent and still. The Zolari ships floated opposite them, also quiet. No weapons fired. No engines flared. For the first time since the fall of New Terra 9, there was peace. Inside the Dawnbringer, Commander James Rourke stood alone on the observation deck. He stared out at the stars, thinking of how close they had come to destroying everything. One command, one button, and an entire world would have vanished. But he hadn't pressed it. He remembered Mira's last message, her voice, her fear, and her bravery. He had promised to make the ones responsible pay, and he had. But in the end, revenge wasn't what brought peace, mercy did. A soft beep came from the wall panel. A message. Rourke tapped the screen. It was from High Command. "Ceasefire honored. Zolari have agreed to a formal meeting. Peace accord negotiations begin in 2 days. Location neutral station orbiting Helios 5. You are requested to attend." Rourke closed the message. He already knew he'd go. Later, the Dawnbringer docked at Helios 5, a quiet, neutral station built for diplomacy. White walls, no weapons, no guards, just voices, tables, and the hope for a better future. Inside the main hall, two sides met for the first time without guns between them. Humans, Zolari, admirals, strategists, ambassadors. And there at the center of it all, Rourke and Valzar. They faced each other across the room. The silence stretched long. Then Valzar spoke first. "You spared us." "I didn't do it for you," Rourke replied. "Then why?" "For her." He handed Valzar a small device. "My sister's final message. She was on New Terra 9. Veilzar accepted it without a word. He watched the screen in silence as Mira's face appeared, her voice trembling but strong. When it ended, Veilzar looked up. "I am sorry." Rourke nodded once. That was enough. The meetings lasted days. Talks were slow, difficult, and tense. But no one walked out. No one raised a weapon. In time, a treaty was signed. The Zellery Human Accord. Terms were simple. No further expansion into Zellery space. Shared research. Prisoner exchange. A promise never again. Months later, Rourke stepped down from command. He needed peace too. He traveled alone to the ruins of New Terra 9. What once was a colony of life was now a silent moon. But it had changed. Now trees were growing. A new memorial stood where the Capitol building had once been. At the center was a stone pillar. Carved into it were the names of every life lost in the war from both sides. Human, Zellery, all remembered. Rourke stood there, a quiet breeze passing over him. He reached out and gently touched Mira's name. "I kept my promise," he whispered. "Just not the way I thought I would." He looked up at the sky. The stars still burned, but now, they burned in peace.